Okay, can you tell me about the continuing threats to journalists around the world?
Yeah, I've both lived and I've written about risks to journalists, in Asia, in the Middle East, in Africa, and here in this hemisphere. I lived in Thailand for a while, and unlike Pakistan, where I'd also lived, uh, there were pretty significant free press laws that were, for the most part, upheld. Now, in the last couple of years, as there have been growth in street protests, journalists have come under attack. A few have been threatened. But I think the difference between, say, a Pakistan or Syria and a Thailand is in Pakistan and Syria, journalists are targeted. They're targeted for being journalists. They're targeted by the government, usually, sometimes by other external actors, terrorists, and so forth, because the journalists are or the journalists are conducting investigations that the government doesn't want. They're uncovering corruption. They're uncovering mistreatment of prisoners or whatever. So you move from a place like Thailand, where when there's civil conflict, journalists are in the middle of it, and they get injured. Sometimes they get killed. But they're not the focus of an attack. On the other side, you've got, as I said, sort of the Pakistans and the Syrians, but you also have Mexico. Now, Mexico is a country that's troubled by tremendous violence, but the violence is less about politics, and it's more about the drug cartels. And so, one of the worst countries in the world in terms of the record of journalists under threat, journalists kidnapped, journalists killed, journalists tortured, is Mexico. And it's tremendously troubling for two reasons. One, journalists are being killed and people aren't being brought to trial, to justice for it. But two, because the threats against journalists are so extreme and so many have been carried out, there's a tremendous chilling effect. In other words, other journalists really think twice, think three times about whether they should write anything about the drug cartels, because of not only the personal threats, but the drug cartels are often thinking nothing about threatening their families, kidnapping their children on the way home from school. So it's very troubling when you're thinking about, how do you get news from these kinds of countries? How do you get news you can trust? There are always immensely brave people who try to get the information out, but it's a trickle, but it should be, we should know much more.